You ever just, like, shotgun your morning coffee just to, like, feel alive? Well, I just did that, and now my throat feels like I swallowed a belt sander. So I may have made the script way more difficult to get through for, like, no reason at all. Well, we only got a few more months to do these until they get shoved into obsolescence, so we better start knocking these out quick. Muckroaches. Muckroaches were among the first enemies I remember finding that slapped you with the whole 1 damage but twice mechanic just so the dice would have at least a single convincing argument to put it on, and the verticals of an all-star NBA athlete made for a surprising case in my playthrough where I actually just started to avoid fighting them. And I don't do that with a goddamn thing. Like, I throw hands in these games to a fault. I get involved in my local communities, and if I'm not leaving behind at least a half genocide in my pilgrimage to Act 2, then I'll convince myself I just didn't have the intended experience. Muckroaches took that attitude and mopped my ass up with it like Gordon Ramsay. Muckroaches only appear in a single area in all of Silksong, and one area is already more than enough. Sometimes they blend into the color palette in the background, sometimes they get obfuscated by details in the foreground, and they fuck with such covetous proficiency that they multiply faster than the denizens of the region. Even Hornet can't ignore this in the Hunter's Journal because she writes out a line that's like, they're tough and they taste like shit, but if somebody doesn't hunt them and eat them, they'll kill us all. It doesn't help that they appear in the region with the same consistency of pelican shit on Pope Beach. Like, how did you even determine their location coordinates? Did you print out the map and shoot it with a fucking blunderbuss? Clawmaidens. This list isn't in any cohesive order, but if it were, Clawmaidens might be number 1, because this is an enemy so self-aware of its own bullshit that the game even gives you a permanent off switch, unlocking an additional Hunter's Journal entry if you haven't already completed it, and that shit reads like a criminal history report. It says they also take extensive silk to operate, but this is highly disagreeable. They have a power source, but it's not silk. Clawmaidens are machines of unrelenting malevolence that run purely on the goodwill and patience of this game's fan base, and we're right primed for a fucking energy crisis. Clawmaidens might have been the largest reason why the High Halls Gauntlet was so miserable for me, and I did that shit with a level 2 needle because my glazed donut ass thought the pin oil locked behind the Courier's Rasher quest was the only one in the game. Thieving away with my silk would have been cause enough for a couple paragraphs dedicated solely to their existence, but nay, the battle isn't over yet, titface. In a twist of complete and total disrespect, they end their turn by placing 2 cards face down and Spider-Manning that shit into a giant spike and then throw it back at you. It'd be like if your teacher caught you and your friend launching spitballs at each other, and instead of sending you to the principal, she just like pulls out a fucking straw and no-scopes your ass. Also, not part of why it pisses me off, but it's a singing audio clip, if you can even call it that, is something straight out of The Conjuring. Like, listen to this shit. Hey Ari, if I can correctly guess how much money you wasted by molesting that violin, can I write it off as a business expense? Wraiths. Wraiths are the kinds of whiny bitches that muscle their way past everything else on the priority ladder and demand prompt reciprocation. And I'm in the fucking mist. They are the only thing on that ladder, and I still feel like I'm not prepared to fight one half the time. There's no running away from a Wraith. If you've pissed one off, you have to deal with it. And in more cases than not, that's gonna look like what I'm doing right here. Waiting for it to attack, sidestepping it, and then whacking it as it passes, and then playing with yourself until it remembers you and decides to attack you again. Repeat until death. Try running in any direction, and you risk the major to 100% chance of blindly throwing yourself into the LOS of a second, considerably angrier Wraith, because these things are as numerous as grains of fucking sand. And this isn't like, you know, like Path of Pain tier precision I need to dig up within myself to deal with the platforming or anything, but it is failable. You can misstep here quite frequently. And having to not just deal with, but kill enemies that can just Danny Phantom through the game when they feel threatened feels biblically infuriating. Hunter's Journal entry tells you dick and balls about the enemy too. Like, a projection of another's will in smog and sick. I'm sorry, is Hornet on DMT? Driznits. Okay, so apparently fucking Snoop Dogg bought the backer reward that lets you name shit. If you've ever felt alone in your life, just go to the top of the blasted steps and aggro a Driznit. And once you get hit, you will feel the communal weight of 6 million controllers being thrown at the same time. It's the game's way of saying, here, you like that Delver's drill so much? Well, here's what your enemies feel like, bozo. And then you keep using it anyways, because Delver's drill is titanically fucked. And then you get a tool that more accurately represents their mask, but isn't nearly as good. and then you learn how to use it, and it wraps back around to kind of being good again. Driznits get a projectile that can bounce up to 6 times. What the fucking hell? My favorite thing to do is go right up to it point blank and smack it right after it fires, only for it to bounce 3 more times and still find its way right up my ass like a Looney Tunes cartoon. I didn't even know this could happen. Bitch looks like the final evolution of a wine bottle opener. Bilewater. I couldn't pick one. They all make me want to kill myself. Let's just pack them all into one paragraph with the same thoughtless irresponsibility they did when populating this region. A steaming casserole of anguish and mental illness. Swamp squits are just fucking disgusting. Mothleaf lagnia sounds like a Hell's Kitchen entree. Stilkins reinforce the historically accurate take that it's either home field advantage or no advantage at all. Bloat roaches are so monstrously obese that Hornet just assumes them to be living hot air balloons, lest their existence become a scientific middle finger. Slubberlugs are 2 frames away from just being environmental hazards, and Stillkin trappers are canonically responsible for all the traps lying around in Bilewater, and therefore must be taken into consideration when deciding the worst of the worst. The toxicity I nurture for this region could be brought to physical form and filtered in a lab like concentrated grape juice, and now it's starting to become cool to say you like the region, sort of in the same way people think they're cool by liking vinyl. You know a Stockholm Syndrome victim when you see one, but because you can't reach through their monitor and prove it beyond any doubt, you kind of just sit there by your lonesome and just silently enjoy being right about something for a couple seconds. Fuck Bilewater, fuck Blighttown, and fuck the color green unless I'm in Verdania. Verdania's pretty cool. Skarr Scouts. Why do these guys have more moves than I do? Actually, why do half the fucking enemies in this game have more moves than I do? According to the Hunter's Journal, ants are apparently the Spartans of Silksong, since they trained in combat since the very day of their birth. They came out the pussoli with brass knuckles and M9s. Hunter's March don't give a fuck. Well, the Skarr Scouts must have also unlocked the Eagle Eye perk, because any scene with the Skarr Scout as an encounterable enemy turns your somewhat peaceful run through far fields into a line-of-sight battle with some of Modern Warfare 2's most talentless campers. These guys encapsulate everything I find both respectable and infuriating about the ant enemies in this game, which is that they seem to have an equally deadly response to every single course of action Hornet could possibly have, up to and including booking it for the nearest room exit. It's just 2 bones with some jungle tape on them. How does this shit hit me from halfway across the room and still do damage? I've seen more aerodynamic weapon designs in trench warfare documentaries. Brother, this isn't Valorant. You're not in the Challenger's Ascension, and you can barely even fit those hips in an office chair to begin with, so let's put down the aim labs and act like we're in a game with 2 fucking dimensions. Thread Rakers. These enemies, I think, fall on a level of respectfully bullshit where they get me just riled up enough to type out an angry sentence or 2, rewatch some old Hell's Kitchen episodes to get my colorful vocabulary up to speed, and then spend time unlocking my Blood Code's secret passive called Getting the Fuck Over Myself and Learning How to Play the Game. And once I do that, suddenly Thread Rakers aren't that big of a deal. I almost put the Termites here because of their lingering double damage, but this is supposed to be a list of annoying enemies, and anything that can be hard countered by someone wearing a bell around their neck I think earns immediate disqualification. The only counter the Thread Rakers really have is just a shot of caffeine and paying basic fucking attention. But sometimes even that's not enough, since the telegraphs for both their main attacks look incredibly similar, which can lead to a surprise backwards jump that you weren't ready for because you were too busy jumping yourself because you thought a different attack was coming. But once you remember you're piloting a bug-sized stealth bomber and that aerial adjustments are basically the key to mastering half the game, once again, Thread Rakers aren't really that big of a deal. Just big enough in my opinion. But their HP looks too high and their defense modifiers are bullshit, so fuck them. Gloomsacs. Not many are familiar with the lore of the game's development, but when Forbes interviewed Team Cherry about the difficulty, their only response was, "Hope you fucking donuts like Fluke Phase," before enthusiastically somersaulting out of the office. Go ahead, fact check me, bitch. Pull up Google right now. I'll watch you do it. Okay, now close out of it, because I was lying. Let's make an Abyss corrupted enemy based on the single most hated creature in the single most hated region in the first game, and then let's make a walking fountain that shits them out for all eternity until you deal with it. Better decisions have been made right before a drive-by shooting. God damn, the office must have reeked of bourbon and American spirits when they were concepting this nightmare. The behavior of a homing missile, the muscle car adjacent HP, and the stupidity of a ham sandwich when it's asked to fly around a wall. Bitch looks looks like a freshly sliced deli ham too when it's hanging off ceilings or whatever. Getting grabbed and then fighting your way out of it zeroes it instantly, but not after it's already sapped at least 2 of your HP anyways, so it's just think of it as like getting hit by a kamikaze enemy like a bellfly or something. To be as annoying as the Gloomsac is a fine art, for only a select few enemies in the game overserve on style while not adding a touch of substance, and that's exactly what this piece of shit deserves. Spit Squits. The Spit Squit is an old archetype of enemy design in video games, harkening back to a simpler time when you could shoot a square out of a rectangle and call it a fucking gun. The design philosophy behind this particular enemy is as forthright as it is offensive. It flies just out of reach, and it throws shit at you. That's all it does. Because like a pre-diabetic 45-year-old couch tumor, that's all it wants to do. And it would rather fly directly into the vine tongue of a Barnak in a defiant blaze of glory than learn to do anything different. This enemy flies like it's trying to overcome a drug addiction. The Spit Squit is the most concrete evidence you can find for the idea that you don't need enemies to be complicated or thoughtful to be difficult. Sometimes all you need is a flight pattern that handles like a golf cart on Tonka truck wheels, and congratulations, you've set a bedrock level standard without even knowing it.
Yes, Rusty, once again forgetting the cross stitch exists.
Hey viewer, do you have any spare bandages? Because I'm gonna need some for the laugh you just murdered. Dickface. Barnaks. Merging the trickery and finesse of Wile E. Coyote with the predatory instinct of a car tire, I think the Barnaks might be the purest and most primal form of annoying you'll ever find in all of Silksong. Because that's all the Barnak really is. It's just a forest tumor with some teeth and a knack for attaching itself to ceilings and playing hide and seek. Putrefied Ducks was around the time this game started to reach a bit of a dragging pace for me because I felt kinda challengeless after having just scaled a snowy mountain and then made a fresh return to Lanedell sewers so I could spend the next 10 minutes digging worms out of my eyes. And I just remember being blown away that I was like 20 hours in and this game was still finding new and interesting ways for its wildlife to twist my head off like a rock'em sock'em robot. The Barnak doesn't pose any sort of urgent threat outside of causing psychic damage to its player. Attacking its vine tongue doesn't damage the body itself, nor does it replenish silk, and you only ever take damage from it if you take it all the way to the top, sort of like SpongeBob riding a fishhook. Very interesting, I thought to myself while rubbing the sunship crumbs out of my unkempt, unemployed beard. I wonder how long it'll take before I find an area that requires using them as elevators to ascend an otherwise unnavigable set of obstacles. Ah, shit, here it is. Never mind. I clocked in 1,800 hours in the first game, bitch. You think I wouldn't have recognized that shit straight out of the playbook, John Madden? Not enough, bitches. Subvert me harder.